Hi, I'm Ken and welcome to the Chronedo Podcast, the show where we talk about watches, business and life. In this episode, we are joined by Raphael Granito, the CEO of Formex Watches. Raphael takes us through his journey from taking over the brand to launching a Kickstarter campaign and transforming Formex into a successful watch brand. We'll explore the challenges he faced, the strategies that worked, and the sacrifices he made along the way. Enjoy the show. To kick things off, could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the story of Formex, how you started to build the brand?
I'm Raphael Granito. I am 36 years old, I think. Yes, 36. And yeah, I kind of grew up in the watch industry by ways of my dad, who founded a business about 40 years ago that supplies different components to watch brands. So make bracelets, cases, clasps, and we also have a dial manufacturer that creates high-end dials and now also all the Formex dials. So yeah, this is how I kind of slid into the industry. I studied international management, but was always also interested in other things, so different sports, music. But then I found my way back into the watch industry by helping in my dad's company, doing product development. And then one day, the opportunity arose because one of the founders of Formex, who is a business friend of my dad and I, he kind of got into an age where he was looking for a succession, etc., for his brand Formex that they founded in the year 2000. And so we started talking and we hashed out a deal to take over the company and grow it from there. So yeah, that was in 2016. And we relaunched the brand with my friend Marcus, who is our marketing director. We did a Kickstarter in late 2018 to relaunch the brand. So I took quite a while to, work on a new model, study the market, and also try to, see what was there in terms of distribution network and retailers, because I literally had zero experience with sales and distribution. All my experience was based on product development, design, and manufacturing. So yeah, everything we had to learn in terms of sales and distribution, we had to learn as we went.
Marcus didn't have that experience in sales and distribution.
No, Marcus originally came from a banking background.
Yes.
We studied international management together, so we're college buddies. And then he went on to become a food and beverage manager in a 5-star hotel in the Bernese Alps. So yeah, nothing at all. But when I took over, there was one watchmaker. She was already there, mostly doing repairs. So, everything that was manufacturing and assembly was done with assembly partners here in Switzerland. And so, yeah, I was pretty much alone in the beginning, and I knew pretty quickly that marketing was the key to selling our first pieces. So yeah, that's why I hired him to take care of all the marketing aspects. And it was really interesting because we did a Kickstarter to relaunch the brand 2018 with the Essence 43 millimeters. And so, yeah, it was quite successful and really gave us the capital to restart the brand fresh.
What made it successful, this Kickstarter campaign?
We started early on, studied other watch Kickstarter programs that were successful. One of the things we did is we knew that you have to sell a lot in the beginning, like a good volume in the beginning for the campaign to take off. Because if you did a good amount of sales in the first, let's say, hour, the Kickstarter would get featured and
the algorithm pushes you.
Exactly. So to do that, we actually invested in some marketing in especially German online watch magazines, so Watch Time, etc., where people could actually pay us something to secure their early birds, the super early bird pricing. Exactly. So we already had an idea and an inkling. Because we made this a paying feature, we already knew that people were really committed and that they were gonna. We said it was non-refundable. Obviously, we did refund for the few people who didn't want to do it, but we mentioned that it was non-refundable so that people were really committed. And at the hour of the Kickstarter launch, they were really all pulling the trigger. And we had about, I would say, We had about 150 people in this
Wow.
super early bird.
And what was the
200.
goal of the Kickstarter campaign?
We set the funding goal pretty low to reach it quickly.
Yeah.
I would have to go back. Maybe we can check it and talk about it later. But I think we set it at 50K or something like that. And that worked really well. We already had one new employee, Marcus and I, who pretty much were on the phone the whole evening and into the night there was a lot of watch collectors who weren't familiar with Kickstarter. So we had to kind of walk them through on phone.
How it works.
Yeah, early days. It was really interesting. And then also fulfillment, back then we didn't have a watchmaker yet. We had a watchmaker, but she was taking care of service and repairs mostly, not the assembly of new models. And so we did everything with one of the watchmakers that was already assembling for Formex when I joined. Yeah, and then all of the fulfillment of I think it was almost 600 pieces, was done during a 2-week period with Marcus and I. It was just getting the watches ready, putting the bracelets on, doing the QC and shipping everything. Yeah, so it was
For sure a good experience.
Very good experience, very exciting. Yeah, it's an exciting startup feeling and, the first success of Formex 2.0. So yeah, it was a very, very fond memories thinking back.
Formex was already known. Do you think that helped for the success of the Kickstarter campaign, or didn't you use that advantage, in your market?
Oh no, we tried to use it as much as we could. So the brand was already a little bit known in Germany. Germany was a market that Formex was already established in. The US back in the days even had a subsidiary of Formex, but that was in, I think, 2006. So that had died down, unfortunately. So not that many people knew Formex in the States, more in Germany. So we tried to build upon that, and Germany became the biggest market for us in the first 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
So Formex was not always the brand it is today. And what made you believe in the potential of the brand?
The people behind it, the people who founded it, the Gretel brothers, mostly Hans Peter, who was a business friend of ours. And also the potential in the models. So they came up with the case suspension system. They have very cool and interesting industrial, high-octane looking designs. And yeah, that was mainly what we believed in. Distribution and sales was kind of low at that point already. Unfortunately, they had a very successful distribution network, let's say in 2005, 2006. Everything before the 2008 financial crisis, they built up a pretty successful brand, and they were in Basel World. It was going really well. And then after the 2008 crisis, a lot of the watch brands suffered. A lot of the smaller watch brands, especially small and independent brands, died. Formex managed to survive, but never lived back up to the splendor of the early noughties, unfortunately. And we made it our mission to get back to that.
And what was your personal motivation to take over a brand or to build a watch brand,
I had 2 options. One, certainly the more comfortable option was to stay in an already successful family business. But, my dad was a successful entrepreneur, and I kind of had the aspiration to do my own thing as well. And to try and get something, to build up something on my own, obviously with the help of some amazing people. But that was the main motivation, to also have a business additionally to what my dad built, which I'm very proud of and very happy to also be a part of today. But to kind of also try myself at this whole entrepreneur thing.
Did you learn a lot from your dad?
One of the biggest attributes I would say my dad has is a very good nose, very good gut feeling. This is not something you can teach or learn, I would say. So I still rely on his advice for many different things. Then also, when talking about HR concerns, now we're hiring more people. So definitely ask him.
He knows how to build an organization.
Yes, exactly. But also we have the luxury of, having a really good HR team at Dexel that, we call up for advice. So we definitely take advantage of the learnings and mistakes, maybe also. Not too many were made by the Excel, but we can definitely rely on a huge treasure trove of experience and information.
That makes sense in the end, to learn from others. That's why we are doing this podcast. Maybe some other people can learn from your experience.
Yeah, and one of the big talents of my dad is he has a very good sense and feeling for aesthetics, or design, or this is really his flair, much more than me. So yeah, I also rely on his advice sometimes for design. But yeah, I also am very lucky to have the design and engineering team from Dexel that some of the people there work on Formex projects with me as well. So we wouldn't be able to develop and design at the level we're doing without this help.
I believe great companies are built with people. You cannot build a company by your own. So you need to rely on other people that have experience and skills.
Yeah. I think one of the keys of entrepreneurship is to, at some point, you're going to have to start getting help to do what you do. You can't do everything yourself. I'm also not a micromanager. So I'm really rely on surrounding myself with good people to create a good foundation to grow.
Mm-hmm. And your family and friends, how did they react when they heard, oh, Raphael is buying a brand, he wants to start his own watch brand? Quick 15-second ad. I'm Ken from the Chronedo Podcast, and together with Formex, we're giving away a 500 Swiss franc voucher for the Formex online shop. Enter now at chronedo-podcast.com/Formex. If the giveaway has already ended, sign up for the newsletter anyway. I regularly host giveaways in my podcast episodes. And your family and friends, how did they react when they heard, oh, Raphael is buying a brand, he wants to start his own watch brand?
I mean, this is just, to my friends, it's probably just a job.
Yeah.
They don't really see the inner workings. Some of them ask me when they do their own thing, they ask me for advice. But yeah, we didn't, I didn't go out and shout it into the woods. So maybe that's a thing. And then also my family, my sisters, my mom, they were all used to, being around my dad. Right. Or not being around my dad because he was working a lot. So he always made time, especially on weekends. But during the week, he worked, like 14, 15-hour days. That was pretty normal for him. But we still, we still had him around. And yeah, he still was a very great dad. And my mom stayed home, so we had a lot of support there. So they were used to seeing somebody working this hard, and now seeing me working this hard as well. So.
But I believe if you didn't have your dad with this company, maybe people would have reacted differently. For some people, it's like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. His dad has already a company in this industry.
Yeah, I think, we really bootstrapped it as well. We didn't have, outside investment. My dad and I also didn't invest, millions into it. So we really bootstrapped it.
Cool.
And, nowadays the saying is that if you don't have 10 million in the bank, don't start a watch brand. This is pretty much what we say nowadays, which, I somewhat agree, but also disagree, because there's many examples of brands founded in the past 5 years who did exactly as we did, Kickstarter, then successfully grew. And so, yeah, it depends on how you're doing it, but it's definitely become harder because it's also at the same time become easier to build or to create a watch brand, because, the overseas production capabilities and also product development capabilities got so good that, watch collectors nowadays can, if they have a sense for design, or, even nowadays for instance, in China, you have a lot of manufacturers who have standard components. You can get a standard case and mix it with a dial they already have, so you don't have tooling costs. And you can mix together a pretty nice watch actually nowadays, and then you sell it. Or there even has been examples of Kickstarters with watches that were 100% purchased on Alibaba, or already made watches. And, that's might be a business model for somebody. But for us, we always had the aspiration to create, and we invest a lot of time. We invest definitely a lot of brain power, time, and money into product development. So we start everything from scratch. We don't have a single not even a single screw that is standard and off the shelf. So everything has to be technically designed, 3D drawn. Everything starts from a blank page. Even to have a watch that is always as thin as possible. That is one of our goals in design, because we're really into keeping it slim in terms of watch thickness. So that means we don't have a case where you can put different movements in. It might be not very smart entrepreneurially, business-wise, but I think the watch space is something where attention to detail does get rewarded. In our case, it does, because people appreciate exactly that attention to detail, even though sometimes our job to explain to customers how much actually goes into things, and customers are hungry for this information. If a customer is extremely interested, I really go into details and see how much detail I can get into before his eyes glaze over. Most of the times they don't, and they stick to your lips as if you were telling them the most amazing campfire story. So I can see that people really want, watch collectors really are hungry for that knowledge on how things are made and what goes into it. So yeah, that's very interesting to see, but it's also our job marketing wise to transfer that knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So you tell the clients about your story. What exactly is your story?
So Formex is a brand that obviously was around before when we started, and it was always a very motorsports inspired brand. It was a high octane design, industrial design inspired brand. You know, the watches back then in the 2000s, 2005, the trend was towards big watches. So large diameter watches, quite chunky watches. And yeah, definitely had some of those and was really mixing. And, you know, for that time had extreme value for money already, which we even increased because we went the direct to consumer route. So nowadays we really pride ourselves in being a brand for the connoisseur. Not only obviously business wise, we have to penetrate the larger bubbles as well and become cool enough for people who don't know that much about watches to buy our watches. But nowadays we're the brand that gets recommended by the watch nerds in your friend group, and that also works for us. So if you're looking for extreme value, and obviously you have to like the design. So we have different designs. We try to move within our own design identity, create a design language. The goal was always, you know, that somebody a couple of years down the line sees a watch without seeing the logo and says, oh, that looks like a Formex. And we already starting to have that, which is
the reef model for sure.
Yeah, already starting to have that. Yeah, a diver, you know, it's not that easy to create a diver that doesn't look like something already out there, because there's so many diver iterations, because it's such a successful watch genre. And so yeah, definitely value for money, intricate design, but not nonsensical design. So I think we're striking a really good balance between design and function. Design elements that are functional. Sometimes the design elements like the reef, for instance, the ear at 9 o'clock doesn't have a function other than being there for symmetry. But then you discover functions, you know, like it actually helps your shirt sleeve slide over the watch. It's kind of like a shoehorn for the shirt sleeve.
Oh.
Yeah, so you discover functions that weren't necessarily made for it. And then other than value for money, in the past years, we built up the brand extremely based on the product. So we, you know, when I started, Formex still had sponsoring going on for race drivers. I kind of took over when I first started because, again, I had no idea what I was doing. So I tried a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But if you're talking about sports sponsorship, it can get pretty cash burny very quickly. So, and we didn't have the cash runway to, you know, like say, let's invest in this young talent here. And then, you know, his followers and his fans, if he makes it, will buy a Formex 5 years down the line. We didn't have that. So we needed to sell watches right now with what we invested. So we pretty quickly figured out that we need to work with YouTubers that are in the watch space, because those are the low-hanging fruits. Yeah. Yes. Connoisseurs. We also pretty early on had a lot of collectors that have pretty hefty watch collections, because you don't have to explain them the attributes they're getting for the money. Plus, they like the design. So it's a very product focused watch brand. But if we want to grow to the larger space in the next years, we also have to infuse the brand with, outside coolness that doesn't come from the watch space. So this is kind of the next phase. But still, again, this still costs a lot of money. We're a growing brand, so cash is not, that abundant. It's not just laying around left and right. So you have to be smart with those decisions as well.
Mm-hmm. Are these partnerships with YouTubers, influencers expensive, or do you send them the watch and tell them make a review and you can keep the watch, or is it paid?
Yeah, very controversial subject because, a lot of the viewers or even the reviewers on YouTube say, I would never take money because it will bias my opinion. I stand on the side of where I say, if the guy only does that, he needs to earn something. So I don't have a problem. And there are YouTubers that you pay something for their video and they're still doing an honest review, and we're not going to be mad or not send a watch anymore. Unless, if he makes fair points of something that can be improved, we'll take it.
Yeah.
We're good sports as well. So yeah, it's a mix. Some people want to keep the watch. Some people are happy with the loaner. Some people just have a rate for their video. And, if somebody has 200,000 subscribers and the video gets watched 50,000 times, you should know what value that brings to the brand. And you can measure it, Back in the days, we worked with a German YouTuber, Winratgeber. And to measure the success of his videos, we made a code.
Yeah.
Never a discount code, because back then already we decided never to do any discounts on our watches. So we offered an additional strap when they used the code. So we could measure exactly how many watches were sold through that video. Sometimes 5 years later, you still get why does that code not work?
I like that. You do not give discount, you give additional value. That's a good idea.
First of all, I think discounts in watches don't necessarily go together. It's a luxury product.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, if you can continuously give a 20% discount and still be viable and not just use the discounts to get rid of dead stock, it means that your prices are too high, basically. So we decided to do a pricing that is very, very tightly margined and tightly calculated to really give our customers the best price around the year. So, and you also are going to know that if you buy a Formex today, you're not going to find it cheaper. You're not going to have to wait for a better deal. That's the price. You're going to pay that. Our retail partners also never discount. And it's tough for some markets because in some markets, people need a discount to buy. It's always easier to sell with a discount. Even at a show, we never do discounts. And it's normal that, at a wind-up show that brands give like a 15, 20, sometimes even 30% discount. But we don't want to do that. And we stuck to it. It's a bit harder in the beginning because people always ask in the live chat, is there a discount code? But nowadays they don't even ask anymore.
They know already, yeah.
So it kind of worked. Yeah. Obviously it's easier for us, if you have a month that doesn't sell so well, it'd be easier to say, okay, now we have 10% discount or 20%. Yeah, you can unload or offload a lot of inventory, but we never really have a lot of inventory. So we're producing in a pretty tight way. And so we have to manage, the inventory, the cash flow. And so far we're doing a pretty good job and it works well.
Did you ever thought about raising the prices? If you have a bigger margin, you could have more spendings in marketing and grow.
So right now we're actually thinking about a price increase because not to have more margin, but just to compensate the strong Swiss franc against a weak, unfortunately, very weak US dollar and euro. I think we lost about 20% of value on our US dollar prices, and we haven't adjusted them because we also know that people are suffering under inflation, cost of living, living expenses going up. So we didn't want to force a price increase, but yeah, we're going to have to do one next year. But it's still, if you look around, if you take an Essence, for instance, and you look around what other models have the attributes, then the level of finishing is somewhat not that objective. Some people are happy or think, and there's an amazing finish on this watch, whereas another one would say, oh no, that's not a good finishing for me. But, even the objective points like the chronometer certification, movement decoration, manufacturing of very intricate dials, things you can intrinsically see on the watch, even if you just compare those, it's still very hard to find a watch in this price range that offers all of that.
Definitely.
So I think even if we have to go up with the prices a little bit due to, currency fluctuations, it's still okay. So, in essence, with a steel bracelet can still go up quite a little bit and still be pretty alone with what they're offering at that same price.
How did you manage to be successful in the United States?
It's a very good question. I think it really exploded during the first COVID year because we already had a good presence on YouTube. We had a good presence in watch magazines online that really tooted our horn in terms of, saying, wow, that's a lot of value for money. They like the design. The finishing is amazing. And so all of that knowledge base was already online. And I think what happened during COVID was people were either at home not working or at home in their home offices and, spending more time online researching. Maybe also for ways to spend money because, you couldn't really go out, you couldn't go on vacation, you couldn't buy flights. So, they had maybe some disposable income that they were looking to cheer their lives up with because of the lockdowns. And I think watches experienced a huge influx of new, younger customers. And Formex was already on the internet with a lot of people, speaking fondly about it. And I think that's what really made the difference in the States. And then also our physical presence there during the wind-up shows. We do 3 wind-ups per year. Next year, maybe even one more, an additional one. And then we always invested mostly in Germany and the United States. Why didn't we invest in Swiss marketing? Because all of the big brands are here. And just for prestige sake, they invest in Google ads, Facebook ads, in rankings and everything. So it was actually Google ads for us in Switzerland for the same category, watches, was about 4 to 6 times more expensive than Germany. So we didn't have the cash to spend that. So we started working other markets. And now Switzerland is catching up, even though we're still not doing that much. But, a lot of people come to our showroom now to purchase watches or order them online. And when we ask them, where did you hear about us? They usually cite either German or US YouTubers or, magazines. So time to start working the Swiss market a bit more. Obviously for us, it's much easier to ship a watch to Switzerland than it is to the States or Germany even.
Maybe an idea would be to join the Swiss version of Shark Tank. So you could gain a bit attention in the Swiss market.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Did you ever thought about that?
Not really. But yeah, just for the sheer exposure. Maybe it's because I don't really watch TV that it's not really on top of mind for me. But yeah, why not?
The interchangeable bezel, how did you came up with that idea?
Quite funny story actually, because we had the first version of the Reef didn't have that, but we already had different bezel colors. So the ceramic bezels were available in 4 colors. And we already had a configurator on the website where you could just pick your dial color, pick your bezel color, pick your strap or bracelet. And then there was a 3-month pre-order period for the first version. And people were playing it. We had the stats, the hotjar stats on the website. People were spending up to 4 hours configuring, playing around with the configurator. A lot, actually, not just 1 or 2 were playing that long. So we had huge page visit times because of that configurator. And apparently people couldn't really make up their mind because they ordered, and about 20% of people who ordered wrote us an email wanting to change the bezel color during the waiting period, the pre-order period. So yeah, that's how I said, hi, why don't we try to come up with a system that allows for interchangeability of those bezels. But it's a huge challenge to manufacture that, for the alignment, for the bezel actions to always be the same. Currently you can order a watch now and order a different color bezel 4 months down the line, we don't have a way of checking if the bezel works. If it's aligned, we send it to you and it has to work. So in terms of manufacturing precision, also sometimes customer service, because sometimes they aren't very perfectly aligned and we have no way of checking it. So yeah, we even played around with the thought of, only allowing the possibility to get additional bezels while you order the watch, which is still, a possibility. But we're, always improving. We're working on an improved system now. And I think, we have a solution for that also, to keep it open to orders later.
Many brands involve their customer into the developing of new products, like gathering ideas, feedbacks. Are you also into that?
We always listen to customer feedback. I mean, not everything or always, but if there's a recurring theme, for instance, when we did the Kickstarter, it was the Essence 43. It was already 2018 was already a year where people were getting back into vintage watches and hence into smaller case sizes. And so a lot of people were saying 43 is too big for me, get us a smaller Essence. We listened to that. It was a very good decision and it worked very well. But we also listen because, as a brand that sells about nowadays 85% direct to consumer, we have the advantage of having very direct customer feedback. So you order a watch, let's say now, the people in production can still get it ready, ship it out. If you're in Germany or in the East Coast, you'll get it tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And if you're really happy, you're going to write us an email, because you get an email saying, hey, share your feedback with us or give us a review. And a lot of people do. And we collect this information. We have a Google Sheet where we collect customer feedback. And if the customer feedback already exists, we put it in there and we can see if they ask for the same thing 100 times, different customers, it's probably good to listen to it. And so we do that, but we don't do collaborative development. It's an interesting take. We just don't want to do it, because I think what the value is in our watches is a big part of it is design. Design is very subjective. You either like it or you don't, or you think it's meh. So, but that's one of our services, is to offer a product. So doing it collaboratively, I think you don't take away, but it's a completely different business model. I think there's enough players already doing that, and we're not really doing it. Obviously, if you do a collaborative and you already know how many people are going to order which, it makes total business sense as well. It's a luxury that we would like to have sometimes, but we now have a couple of years of experience, and we know that, like blue always works. The dial collar. We have some values that we already can rely upon when we launch a new product. So we use that rather than collaborative customer feedback.
Do you also have insights about maybe of the age of the buyers of your watches?
No, unfortunately, that's not. I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, if you're a proponent of data protection, then unfortunately, we don't know the age. We do from time to time. We haven't done it in a while, and it's a customer survey. So, if you send it out to 40,000 people and people react to it, you get a pretty good idea. But when we last did it, it was all across the board, from 30 years up to 75, 80 sometimes even. But the concentration of dots would be between 30 and 60, I would say. And I think if we do it nowadays, we would get much more dots in the younger portion, because of the fact that I mentioned. Because when the smartwatches came out, a lot of people in the industry didn't take it seriously as a threat, which clearly it was for the price segment they were attacking. It was a huge threat, and it's now, the largest watch brands are smartwatch brands. And I always was on team, it's going to help us down the line, because, every 15, 14, 16-year-old wanted a smartwatch, be it a Samsung, Apple Watch, probably the most popular one. But that same person is getting used to wearing something on their wrist, which they weren't back then. 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, people weren't really wearing watches, especially young people, teens and so on. I saw it when I was studying. Nobody was wearing. I was always wearing watches, and then even I stopped wearing watches for a certain time, but because I was into watches, but you didn't have anyone into watches, and just wearing something there to show you the time and your WhatsApps, maybe.
And you get used to it.
Yeah, and then for young lads, when they come to a point where they earn their first nice salary, maybe, or they want to celebrate something, they start looking into mechanical watches, and that's where we come into play. So I think I always suspected that this was going to happen, and I think what happened during COVID was also partly from that. It's probably a whole mix of fortunate circumstances.
Yeah, and I believe with the technology that is coming with AI and digitalization, people will value more and more mechanical watches. I think it's a real thing.
It's a little mechanical marvel, and as a guy, you probably don't have, you don't wear that too much jewelry. Some people do, but sometimes I wear rings and that's it.
Yeah.
But as a guy, that's really your piece of jewelry is your watch, maybe, and you can spend money into really expensive or nice clothes, but it has less recognition value than a shiny piece of mechanical engineering on your wrist. So I think that also plays into it. And then also we have a lot of more female customers joining, maybe because of our stone dials. We don't have a female dedicated line, and I don't know if we're gonna build one. And nowadays everything is a bit more fluid, so we leave it up to the customer who wants to buy our watches. I see it during watch shows, like Wind Up or Watch Time. Before, maybe like 5-6 years ago, there were very few women at those shows, and the ones that were there were just hanging out with their boyfriends or husbands and then coming with them. And nowadays we have a lot of female customers at the shows that come there and know a lot. They know a lot about the product. They know a lot about the movements, about the history. They're real collectors, and this is growing as well. So, you got 50% of the population potentially joins the club, and which is great.
So Formex has grown for 6 years now. So can you tell us a bit about your growth? Like any numbers or?
To be honest, in the beginning, there was no growth. So very depressing. I thought adjusting the prices to a direct-to-consumer level would also already do the trick, but it was just crickets chirping in the online store for the first couple of months. And then obviously the Kickstarter helped a lot, and we grew from there. But like a lot of waves, when you launch something, you sell well, and then your standard collection that is already there maybe didn't sell so well. And then obviously you have to grow the collection to offer something for more different potential customers. So I actually don't have it in my head what the progression is, but in the last 4 years, we were at about 20 to 40% of yearly growth every year. Yeah.
AI is changing the way many businesses work. Do you also involve AI for marketing or development? Or is that a topic for you?
Yeah, all of our watches are designed by AI. No, I'm kidding. We use AI mainly for text generation, but not marketing text. It's communication, things that you just tell ChatGPT to write you a letter for your insurance or stuff like that. It's really helpful. Or ask them questions about, Swiss employment law, so you don't have to actually go search for things. That's very helpful for us. In terms of marketing, sometimes we generate background for pictures. That's about the extent of what we use.
Cool.
Sometimes we generate pictures. When we did the Space Gold launch in summer, since 39 Space Gold, we generated astronauts with a golden visor, and then we used these as teasers. So first you had an astronaut with a golden visor, then you had an astronaut with a piece of meteorite in his hands, a piece of gold in his hand, and then you had a meteorite colliding with the gold. So these were the teasers, and these were all generated by AI, because it was actually the first time we played around with it, and it was really fun. And I think the result was pretty good also. But other than that, we don't use it that much. I mean, I know that AI is going to play a huge role in customer service. We have a live chat. You can reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, live chat, customer service form on our website. You can call us, and all of this gets collected in one software. And these softwares, create tickets, and you can pass them around in the customer service team. And these softwares are starting to use AI to, sort tickets already pre-sort, do a triage, offer answers. So we're using that, but it's still a bit limited, like we're not using open language models for that yet. But once we can, it's going to be amazing, because we now have, I don't know, maybe 150,000 closed tickets. And if the AI can use that to generate future answers, it's going to be a huge help. So we started implementing small steps that already decreased our ticket loads by about 15%, which was big.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there's still amazing possibilities ahead. Not necessarily for me, not necessarily in design. What I find most interesting in AI video and image generation are the weird things that AI does, that's amazing. But in terms of functional design, I don't see it being used in Formex in the next year.
But I believe as a business, it's smart to be already into it, to play around with it, use it a bit for some cases.
I'm really looking forward to using it in, integrated in our ERP system, where it can do predictions. It can, remind you when to order components and stuff like that. So that's very interesting, and I'm looking forward to using more of it soon.
So in my opinion, Formex has built an amazing community on Instagram. How did you manage to grow such a community? Is there a secret behind it, or?
Yeah, what's the secret? We also have a really good Facebook group that is quite active, and so we tell people when they buy a watch, they receive an email, hey, you can go share it there, or you can interact with other owners. And since Formex is still kind of a secret tip in the watch community, or especially in the watch bubble, you're kind of, as soon as you buy one, you're kind of part of the club, and people want to live that. So we give them the opportunity to do that in the Formex Watch Club. And on Instagram, nowadays everybody wants to share their lives and what they're doing and their new purchases. So yeah, that definitely plays into our cards. And also on Instagram, you have to constantly create good quality content. And yeah, it's 2-3 full-time jobs in our company to do that and create it. So I think it's just because people know that, if you talk to our customer service and it's a question that is too technical for them, it still ends up on my desk, and you're gonna end up talking to who created your watch, which is rare for a big brand. You can't do that. Obviously, as we grow, we have to find other solutions, but we're still a very approachable brand, even as we grow, and people enjoy that. They kind of feel part of the team, and they are. We treat them that way, and customer service is a very big point that we're investing in. No matter who talks to us and what the problem is, we try to find a solution for them. And the goal is to, stuff happens, not to say shit happens, but it does. And a watch is something made of hundreds of components with hundreds of people involved in the production cycle. And it's people, and people make mistakes. And some things are going to happen that, sometimes a movement works perfectly. And we test it for about a week after assembly. We test power reserve after manually winding it. We test the power reserve after automatically winding it on the winder. And then we do multiple sets of chronometry checks at fully wound after 24 hours and even later. And even then, sometimes it happens that a watch arrives at the customer and the movement doesn't work. It's very rare, but it happens. And if it happens to you, it sucks because, you paid good money for a nice watch and you receive it and it just doesn't work. It's horrible. It's a horrible experience. But as a brand, what you do with this situation and how you explain it and how you deal with it. Obviously, if there's a watch that is dead on arrival, we don't even wait for the customer to send it back. We send them a replacement watch, and then that one goes straight to our service center to see what's wrong and diagnose it. But it happens, and it's really about how you deal with it as a brand. And if you deal with it correctly, you turn a bad situation into a lifelong customer.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And what I also like is that you reshare some stories from customers. I saw that on your Instagram profile. It's pretty cool, I believe. It must be a good feeling to own a watch and the CEO is reposting that photo, it's
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's very cool for the person who took the time to take
Yeah.
the picture, but it's amazing for us to get so many, because for some reason, a lot of watch aficionados are also camera nerds. Or,
Yeah.
so great
I
combo.
don't know if there is a study, but I have the same gut feeling about it.
It's a great combo because watches are notoriously hard to take pictures of because there's so many little shiny details and things that you want
The
to
light
show.
must
Yeah,
be right.
and the focus. It's
Yeah.
such a small object. Sometimes you have to stack to focus everything. And so we're really lucky that we have so many customers who are so good at taking pictures, and we can actually reuse the pictures, and it's great content for us, and they're happy that we're sharing it on our platform. So it's a win-win, I would say.
Mhm. I already saw there are videos on Instagram where you are talking about new models. I believe that's a good strategy. Putting you as a person into the center, it gives emotion to a brand, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's not my biggest passion to be in front of a camera, but I like to be more behind the scenes, but I don't mind, and I understand that it's good to give the brand a face. And we have one advantage that many brands of our size don't have, is that we manufacture a lot ourselves. So we can give a sneak peek into how the watches are assembled without having to send somebody somewhere else. We have our in-house photographer who can just do an assembly video, or show how some pieces get machined, how we're making prototypes, how we're 3D printing stuff. We want to do more and more of this. We have to create pictures of the watches, so it's always a bit a hustle to have enough time to create all the content we want.
Mm-hmm. So running that business is really stressful. How do you stay healthy?
Yeah, so I had a pretty long enforced break because I had a bad mountain biking accident this summer that put me out of order for quite some time. But I'm lucky to still be here. So I had a big break, but I tried to swim before work. So usually I go to the pool at 7 a couple of times a week. I try to swim, and then also just some sports on the weekend, preferably outdoors. So I really like to hike, ski, snowboard. I used to do a lot more sports, like skydiving, paragliding, and all of that stuff. Was put the risky stuff away this year after seeing that even a jump on a mountain bike can basically kill me.
Yeah.
I'm starting to go a bit easier on those things, but I still like the adrenaline. I still like to go down very steep stuff on my snowboard. But yeah, obviously, and luckily now I have a team, because back in the day when it was just Marcus and I, that would have been catastrophic. It really put me out of order. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and out of order for 5 weeks total because of the painkillers. I couldn't even write emails. So yeah, that would have been really bad. And nowadays, luckily, I have a really good team. So as I mentioned, my best friend Marcus takes care of marketing. He now has a team of people working with him and some agencies. Then admin and production, planning and management is done by my twin sister. Yeah, and then my partner, she's taking care of sales and customer service. Also, we have a really good team of relatively young people, not only value experience as well, but it's just an amazing atmosphere to come here. And you can see that everybody likes to work here, which is, as a business goal for me, that's really high, creating an atmosphere where people, I think you can also expect more from people if you create an environment where they feel comfortable.
Sure.
But also solicited. So they have to work hard, but they actually do it. They like to work hard here. So that's kind of an atmosphere we always have a goal to provide here.
Mm-hmm. And do you find time to spend time with your family or girlfriend?
Yeah, not enough. Unfortunately, I have amazing nephew and niece, and I don't see them nearly enough. And yeah, it's a problem. I'm also away a lot of the weekends for work travel. And then you also have your friends you want to see a couple of times a year. So, and that's always on weekends. And that always has to be focused on the weekends that I'm here. So it's not easy, but I'm not the only one who has to work a lot. So
So I have only 2 questions left. So success often comes with sacrifices, but they are not always easy to talk about. But can you share maybe some sacrifices you made?
Honestly, it's mostly time. Time is the biggest sacrifice because you need so much of it. And, to be honest, a goal of every entrepreneur should be to make time. At least, like this is how much we're working now to build something. But then you should also, as I mentioned before, surround yourself with good people, which should make time. But, hiring people, especially in Switzerland, it's probably one of the most expensive countries to hire people. So, you have to also take it easy and take into account the growth, the cash flow, your revenue growth before hiring too many people. So, yeah, you have to strike a balance, but the biggest sacrifice is not being able to spend enough time with things other than working. But, if you have to have 10 different hobbies next to work, you should probably not be an entrepreneur because you're not going to have time to do it. And your hobby is one of your biggest hobbies should be your company.
And I hope you like
helps.
what you are doing.
Yes, yes, I like it. Obviously, we all would like to have less problems, less, like for things to go smoother than they are.
But problem solving is
problem solving is one of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest, the things you spend most time on, because creating a new design puts you in front of problems. You have to make compromises between design, function, engineering, and everything is problem solving actually as an entrepreneur, I would say.
Finally, if you could give one advice to our listeners, whether it's about life or business, what would it be?
I think staying true to your values is very important because especially in early days in a business, sometimes you have to make decisions that are not necessarily, helping you grow faster, but in the long run, you look back and, not giving discounts is one of those. This is a very concrete example of saying we could have sold much more back then by doing 3 times a year, 4 times a year, doing sales and discounts. But we didn't do it, which was a lost opportunity to make more cash back then, but it really strengthens our position now. So, stay true to those things and, try to find a good mentor because it can seem pretty lonely when you're doing this. Any business, you can feel alone sometimes, and having a good person to talk to. And what I found is that a lot of the successful entrepreneurs that are already in the game for a long time, bit older, they're actually happy to share. They're really happy to give you advice. Some of them even make it their mission to do that, or they even go teach in universities. So they're happy to exchange. And sometimes if you don't know what to do, if you have a question, even if you don't know somebody, like if you're a watch brand or starting out, whatever, take the phone and call somebody, and you'd be surprised how easy it is to get advice. So yeah, don't be too shy to ask.
Great advice. Thank you very much, Raphael, for sharing your story and your journey. It's really incredible. I wish you good luck for the future.
Yeah, thank you for coming by.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join the contest or sign up for the Chronedo Circle mailing list at chronedo-podcast.com. In the Chronedo Circle, you will get exclusive access to limited promotions and giveaways that I arrange with my podcast guests for my listeners. As well, you will get many other exciting benefits like behind-the-scenes insights and key takeaways from the podcast episodes.